Welcome back to Cards and Comics. So today I want to talk about Fanatics, and not the thing that everyone else is talking about, because everyone else is talking about the acquisition of PWCC by Fanatics. I don't want to talk about that because I think that's been done to death. If you want my take on it, monopolies aren't great. Vertical integration is what the industry is going to become. And one-stop shopping is what every company's trying to do. So that's my take on that. So that's real quick. I want to talk about the other acquisition Fanatics made that no one's really talking about, that I think is a big deal. And it's something that could change the shape of the hobby forever. And that is their acquisition of PointsBet. PointsBet is a sports gambling company. That has software and assets to allow people to gamble on sports. And this is something that I think that's really important because Fanatics has stated they really want to get into sports gambling. They want to make a big leap. And the thing that makes this even more relevant to us sports card collectors is that for years, the hobby has struggled with the idea that the hobby is nothing more than just gambling. And I'll talk about it a little bit more in depth about some other aspects besides opening cards. But with breakers, with chase cards, with inserts, with the money, the bounties that are out there, it's very hard to argue that it's not gambling. In fact, there's court law, case law, that states it is gambling. There's already been precedents stated that sports cards and chase cards specifically is a form of gambling. Now, if you get into why I think it's a big deal, it's because of what Fanatics has said about this topic, and I'll go right here.
This is you buy merchandise, you're incented to game. You gamble, you're incented to get a collectible. An integrated experience. So we will be. I'll tell you this right now. We will be in every major market other than New York by next football season. 15 to 20 states.
So there you go. That is Michael Rubin talking about what they want to do with gambling. He's talking about Fanatics going big on gambling, and this is before they purchased PointsBet. This is before they made these acquisitions. They had planned on going state by state, and you heard it earlier in his conversation. He's talking about basically making their database work for them, integrated experience. If you buy a sports card, you'll get maybe some extra credit for gambling. If you gamble, you get extra credit for memorabilia. It's all going to be integrated together to where gambling, sports cards are going to be intertwined. I think irrevocably. It's going to be hard to unwind this in the future. Then you add in the fact that DraftKings is just going into physical trading card pack breaks, and DraftKings is the number one site for sports gambling online. So the integration of sports cards and gambling is happening. You've got multiple companies doing it. You've got Jeff Wilson talking about it on his channel about sports cards gambling. Sports cards and gambling. And the thing I really didn't like about his article is he talks about how you can use gambling skills to make your card collecting better. I think this is just a poor take, and I'll get into why this is concerning on multiple levels. But the thing I look at here is this has been around for a long time. Here's an article from 10 years ago from Bleacher Report talking about that kids are the target of cards, and this is something that I think we have to be very careful with. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is that we want to talk a lot about growing collectors, starting collectors at the beginning of their hobby journey, which is as kids. We talked about Fanatics marketing to kids. The Louis Roberts show, the cooking show they just did. They're going to give away packs. They're going to get kids in, but then they're going to advertise to them gambling. They're going to integrate gambling experiences and cards and memorabilia. They're going to do box breaks on the same channel, on the same apps that are promoting gambling. This is a intermingling of two things that are very different, in my opinion. And it's going to create a lot of issues, I think, for the hobby in the future. You're going to create a lot of issues on morality. You're going to have a lot of issues on how state by state this is going to be taken. Because here's the thing, guys. The gambling is not in all states. So you've got an article here about which states have it legal, what states have it not legal. And if sports cards become deemed gambling and maybe regulated state by state, this is going to create massive issues. You don't understand that, if you work in an industry where you've got federal regulations and state regulations, having every state regulate your industry differently creates chaos. It creates situations where if I live in the state of New York, I may not be able to buy certain products. If I live in California, I may not be able to participate in group breaks. This could be a really big problem for the sports card hobby if we keep intertwining gambling with the hobby, with something that is supposed to be a fun diversion, not something that is going to be, let's say, could become a lifelong addiction that creates issues for someone for their entire life. So that's two different things, right? And I'm talking about the extremisms, right? You can collect extremely and put yourself in a bad financial situation, just like you can overbet. But it's been proven that gambling, from a psychological perspective, is more addictive and more damaging than collecting sports cards. Now maybe there needs to be more studies on this, right? But I would just say there's a lot more, let's say, proof statistically that gambling creates more destructive behavior in individuals than just collecting sports cards. And now we've got this being marketed to kids because kids want to go where the cards are. Fanatics owns Topps. Fanatics is going to have all the licenses. They're going to have all the cool cards. They're going to have gambling. They're going to have box breaks. They're going to have everything. And it's going to be advertised to them. And it's going to make it seem like it's normal to do both, to collect and gamble. And that's the problem I have with it, is that you're really, again, mixing two things that to me are really different. And the one thing I'd also say too is that, it's going to become, it's going to become a problem in the future, right? So here's the National Review talking about gambling and how prevalent it's become. And no matter what your politics are, no matter how you look at it, this issue could become big for people who have maybe more of a fundamental traditionalist view on America, to where they may go and fight this. They may say, we don't want gambling in every state. We don't want sports cards and young kids to gamble at an early age or be exposed to gambling in this way. And they might create laws that prevent this from happening. So it's something we got to really pay attention to, because it's something that I do believe can disrupt the hobby. It could put a black mark on the hobby to where the majority of what people think about the hobby is just it's about gambling. It's about just throwing your money down and hoping you hit a big card. Now, the other thing I want to talk about, because I just talked a lot about box breaks, right, and talk about vertical integration of the hobby. How you've got Fanatics and Collectors Universe all trying to get marketplaces and vaults and auction houses and grading companies and everything under one roof, so you don't have to go anywhere else. You can buy your cards, sell your cards, grade your cards, do everything under one roof. Now you can gamble, right? Now you can gamble. You can take your winnings from your gambling and buy a box of cards or buy a T-shirt or whatever it is. I mean, I don't know if that's really the same behavior. I don't know if that's real behavior that people do today, but it's what they're saying that they want to do, right? And I think it's the idea of like all this money is going to flow into one, company that's got this type of vertical integration, right? And that's what everyone's kind of, or that's what these companies are really going for, right? But to me, again, I think these kind of, tying together of these companies has been always a bad idea. Again, I don't think, companies owning marketplaces is a great idea. When you grade cards and sell cards, it's always created conflicts of interest. And to me, we're getting just more and more conflicts of interest all under one roof. But what I want to leave you here last is here's an article from it's a published article from this is from the Journal of Legal Aspects of Sports. I know everyone's got this in their library, but I wanted to just talk about, and this article here was titled Emerging Legal Issues in the Sports Industry. Are Trading Cards a Form of Gambling? And so if you can read this, it's online if anyone wants to take it. It goes into the RICO lawsuits, which is the racketeering lawsuits that were filed in the 90s, and why those lawsuits didn't go anywhere. Because, if you get down to it, they couldn't really conclusively prove that there was any damage. Because you got something by buying a pack of cards. This is what's protected the hobby for years, is you get something. You don't get nothing. So gambling, a lot of times you get nothing. You gamble on a horse. You gamble on a hand of cards. You're not guaranteed to get anything. And with sports cards, and theoretically, you get something. Now, with box breaks, with chase cards, with other ways to enjoy the hobby, you get nothing. And that's different than it used to be when this article was written, where box breaks weren't as big a deal. And again, if you read the article, it says that if it is determined, it says future lawsuits that do not argue for violations of the RICO Act, but focus on the gambling implications of trading cards, may find more success in the future with these lawsuits. And I think that is maybe where we're headed. We're headed towards a state-by-state situation where there's different ways to buy and sell cards in every state because of these kind of laws. These lawsuits may come in and make certain things impossible. Group breaking may not be allowed in a certain state. You may not be able to sell certain chase cards or have certain chase cards in certain products. Or they may have to redo how they do some of these things. That could really change the hobby, right? But in the end, it's determined. And so if you read this article, it says, it was determined that the sale of chase cards constituted a form of gambling in Schwartz v. Upper Deck in 1997. So there's case precedent that chase cards are a form of gambling. Now with box breaks and things like that coming to the prevalence, I think you'll find more and more and more evidence that the hobby is gambling. And the last thing I would say is grading is now becoming a form of gambling as well. If you look at how people talk about grading on their channel, they talk about the gamble of grading a card. They talk about, I took a gamble. I gambled on a card. I gambled on grading. I gambled on this. I gambled on that. Okay. So that is something that you don't see, or you didn't see back in 2013, in the 90s, is, gambling on products, gambling on grading, grading cards. I just thought about this the other day, sending cards in. I'm thinking like, well, I'm hoping for a 10, because if I hit a 10 on this card, it's a jackpot. If I get an 8 on the card, I lose money. If I get a 9, I'm probably okay. And so that is still a form of gambling, right? You're sending cards in to PSA, and you're hoping you get something out of it. And so you're taking a gamble, right? You're grading cards hoping for a certain number to come up. So this hobby is really formed around right now on a lot of things that are basically, to me, gambling, and the hobby's leaning into it. So I just want to put that out there for everyone to think about. How do you feel about the hobby getting tighter and tighter with gambling? That gambling and sports card collecting are becoming intertwined. Because I don't think it's great to make it this close. And I've never thought it was great to be this vertically integrated with the companies. Because again, the shenanigans can happen after that. And it just doesn't look great, for the hobby in terms of just, everyone being held accountable. So that's my take, guys. Let me know what you think in the comments, and I'll talk to you next time in Cards and Comics. Bye.